Right now, across America, immigration officers are reviewing files that could change thousands of lives. Many of the names belong to doctors, engineers, students, and families who have lived legally in the United States for years. But in 2026, legal status is disappearing faster than ever. Protections are ending, visa waits are growing, and for some, the right to stay is now being decided in court. Today, we count down 7 Asian countries whose citizens could face the biggest immigration crackdown in America. Stay with us because number 1 is a country most Americans see as an ally, not a target. Number 7, Myanmar. Myanmar sits at number 7, and its story is about a government that no longer exists in any form Washington recognizes. Since a military coup tore through the country in 2021, thousands of Myanmar nationals already inside the United States on student, work, and tourist visas found themselves unable to safely return home. The safety net for many of them was temporary protected status, a legal shield that lets people stay and work while their home country is unsafe. In late 2025, the Department of Homeland Security moved to end that shield for Myanmar. The termination was set to strip protection from thousands of people almost overnight. But in January 2026, a federal judge stepped in and temporarily blocked the move, ruling that the government's justification did not hold up. The case is still working through the courts. What makes this fight so tense is the reason behind it. Ending TPS for Myanmar would have signaled that Washington sees the country as safe enough to return to, even as human rights groups continue to document violence against ethnic and religious minorities inside the country. For thousands of families with American-born children, this is not a policy debate. It is the difference between staying together and being separated by a court date. Number 6, Bangladesh. Number 6 is Bangladesh, a country now caught inside one of the widest visa freezes in recent American history. In January 2026, the State Department paused the issuance of immigrant visas for applicants from 75 countries, and Bangladesh made that list. For families who had already waited years for approval, sponsorship, and interviews, the pause meant one more indefinite delay, with no announced end date. Bangladesh has also drawn attention from immigration enforcement over patterns of visa overstays, where people arrive legally on tourist or work visas and remain well past their authorized time. Communities in New York, Michigan, and New Jersey have grown around Bangladeshi families who came through legal channels and built lives here over a generation. The frustrating part for many of them is this: the freeze does not distinguish between a fraudulent application and a legitimate one still waiting in line. Everyone from that list of 75 countries is now stuck in the same holding pattern, regardless of how solid their case is. Number 5, Nepal. Nepal takes the 5th spot, and its citizens are living through one of the fastest status reversals on this entire list. Nepal held temporary protected status for years, granted after a series of natural disasters made return unsafe. That changed in 2026. Along with Afghanistan, Cameroon, Honduras, and Nicaragua, Nepal's TPS termination has already taken effect, according to federal data tracked through the courts. That single decision affected close to 320,000 people across all 5 countries combined. Nepal was also placed on the State Department's expanded list of nations facing a pause on immigrant visa processing in 2026, adding a second layer of restriction on top of the TPS loss. For Nepali nationals who built careers, opened businesses, and raised children in the United States under a status that once felt permanent, the message from Washington in 2026 has been blunt. Temporary was always temporary, and time is now up. If this kind of story matters to you, hit subscribe and tap the bell, because we track policy shifts like this as they happen, not months later. Number 4, Vietnam. Number 4 is Vietnam, a country whose relationship with America has always been complicated, and in 2026, immigration policy is where that complexity is showing up. Vietnam has one of the highest visa overstay rates among Southeast Asian nations tracked by the Department of Homeland Security, a pattern that predates this administration but has drawn sharply increased attention under it. At the same time, trade tensions between Washington and Hanoi over tariffs and manufacturing have added a layer of political friction that rarely existed before. Vietnamese nationals applying for student and work visas are now facing longer processing times and tighter scrutiny than they did just a few years ago. None of this amounts to a formal removal order aimed at the entire community, but it does mean the path into and through the American immigration system has narrowed considerably for Vietnamese applicants navigating an already slow process. Number 3. Pakistan. Pakistan lands at number 3, a country that has spent over 2 decades on America's national security radar, and in 2026, that history is shaping immigration decisions in real time. Pakistan appears on the State Department's list of countries facing a pause on immigrant visa issuance, and it was also flagged in earlier drafts of an expanded travel restriction list focused on countries where background verification is considered unreliable. Homeland Security has pointed to gaps in documentation and identity verification as a recurring obstacle in processing Pakistani applications. For the hundreds of thousands of Pakistani Americans working in medicine, engineering, and technology, many of whom entered through entirely legal channels, the frustration is that broad national security concerns are now shaping individual cases that have nothing to do with any wrongdoing. In today's immigration climate, the system is prioritizing caution over speed, and Pakistani applicants are absorbing much of that caution. Number 2. India. Number 2 is India, and this entry is the most contradictory on the entire list. India sends more skilled workers to the United States than any other country on Earth. Its citizens power hospitals, banks, and technology companies from Silicon Valley to Houston, and yet, in 2026, Indian nationals are facing the sharpest rise in visa denials in years. Here is the reality behind the headlines. The national immigration backlog has climbed past 11 million pending cases, the highest ever recorded. USCIS processing has slowed dramatically under new internal directives, and H-1B denial rates have risen alongside a new $100,000 fee attached to new H-1B petitions. On the green card side, close to 1.2 million people are stuck in employment-based backlogs, and roughly half of them were born in India, a direct result of a decades-old rule that caps how many green cards any single country can receive each year, regardless of demand. Some Indian professionals who have lived in America for over a decade are still waiting for a green card that may not arrive for another 40 or 50 years. Their children who grew up entirely in American schools could age out of their parents' legal status the moment they turn 21. Congress has floated relief bills, including a proposal that would grant permanent residency after 7 continuous years in the country, but nothing has passed. For now, one of America's most educated and economically vital immigrant communities is watching the ground shift beneath a system it helped build. Number 1, China. And that brings us to number 1, China, where the story stops being about backlogs and overstays entirely. This is about geopolitics. In 2026, Chinese nationals are facing the most direct and openly stated immigration crackdown of any country on this list. In an escalation that stunned even seasoned immigration attorneys, the Secretary of State announced the government would, in his words, aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, specifically naming those with ties to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in sensitive scientific fields. Consular posts paused new student visa interviews. Enhanced social media vetting is now standard for applicants from mainland China and Hong Kong. The justification centers on a real and documented problem. Over the past several years, multiple Chinese nationals studying at American universities have been convicted of espionage-related offenses, including efforts tied to military-linked research programs back home. Federal officials argue that student visas have, in isolated but serious cases, been used as a cover for intelligence gathering, but the scale of the response has drawn its own controversy. Some lawmakers have publicly called for canceling every Chinese student visa outright, a policy that would affect hundreds of thousands of people who have nothing to do with espionage and are simply trying to earn a degree. Critics, including advocacy groups representing Asian American communities, call the approach a dangerous overcorrection that punishes an entire nationality for the actions of a small number of individuals. What makes China different from everything else on this list is intent. This is not a side effect of a backlog or an overstay statistic. It is a deliberate, openly declared policy decision built on genuine national security concerns, but applied at a scale that touches millions of ordinary people, students, families, and permanent residents who now find themselves treated as a risk simply because of where they were born. 7 countries, 7 very different stories, some driven by broken bureaucracies, some driven by broken diplomacy, all of them converging on the same outcome: families across Asia watching the rules change under their feet in real time. If this breakdown helped you understand what is actually happening, not just the headlines, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which of these 7 surprised you the most. We read every one. See you in the next video.